Hey everyone, it's NB, and today we're gonna talk about a real cEDH deck. It's Blue Farm.
No, you already got 3 videos on the channel. It's my turn to talk about stuff.
Hello everyone. Today we're covering a top 16 breakout star from the Silicon Dynasty tournament, Slicer from the Transformers Secret Lair. This Decepticon caught players off guard with his tricks and had a stellar 3-2 record, making it all the way to the semifinals. So let's find out why this super interesting mono-red beatdown deck works, and how it can stay in the meta longer than other brews. Slicer is a 5-mana red legend that has double strike and haste. At the beginning of each opponent's upkeep, you may have that player gain control of Slicer until end of turn. If you do, your opponents will get an untapped Slicer and he's goated. He also can't be sacrificed. If you choose to not hand off Slicer, then transform Slicer to the backside. Slicer, high speed Antagonist. That's me. As a transform vehicle, Slicer is a non-creature artifact on your opponent's turn. Yet on your turn, thanks to its living metal ability, Car Slicer will be a creature and be able to attack. This is helpful sometimes if you don't want Slicer to be hit by creature removal on your opponent's turns. As a car, whenever Slicer deals combat damage to a player, you transform it back to the robot side at the end of combat. We're gonna focus on the front side though, because that's what makes him so deceptively powerful. Get it? Deceptive. This deck is the closest thing to Sly as we'll get right now in cEDH. Godo, calm down, you're a combo deck. Slicer's keyword abilities of haste and double strike means that on the turn you play him, Slicer can connect and deal 6 combat damage to an opponent. The haste is massive here. Even if your opponent removes Slicer, your loss in tempo is minimal since you can replay him and swing again. And you're not concerned about wasting your mana here, because this deck is all about playing Slicer and attacking. What elevates Slicer into a competitive contender is how you can give him away to an opponent during their upkeep. You can politic the scariest Grixis deck, and then have 2 opponents swing your Slicer to build up that commander damage. Within 1 cycle, you can deal 18 commander damage on a single opponent. Wow. Now this is where it gets even more interesting. This deck wants to play stacks pieces to delay your opponent's windows long enough where you can shut them out of the game through Slicer, slicing through life totals. But the interesting consideration here is pump effects. This includes instant spells like Built to Smash, equipment like Hero's Blade, or even Jeska by tripling Slicer's damage from 6 to 18 within 1 combat. You can compare these pump effects as time walks. Any of these small pump effects are massive in reducing the clock to take on an opponent. As we've shown, a cycle of Slicer beats is 18 commander damage. Pumping Slicer at any point will allow him to take out an opponent, allowing you to swing at someone else on your turn. Slicer is a gimmick deck. Everybody knows the gimmick once the secret's out. Like other commander-centric decks like Winota or Saka Clark, it's easy to make them play catch-up by removing their commanders. Here's why Slicer is different and why Slicer can stick around the meta a little longer. Slicer creates a unique prisoner's dilemma where you're incentivized to allow Slicer to resolve and do its thing. Player 1 sets the tempo of the game, and if that player is clearly ahead and player 2 resolves a Slicer, that Slicer actually might help keep you in the game. Slicer isn't a group hug deck, we know that. He's a Decepticon after all. But Slicer offers the table an interesting choice. Will Slicer take on an opponent for you and give you a window, or will Slicer manage to steal the game under you? That situation sounds a lot like Winota games, where you sometimes need Winota to finish off an opponent that's clearly ahead. But Slicer doesn't snowball and shut your window through an oppressive board state. He's balanced enough where you're willing to make Slicer's gambit. I don't think Slicer will be taking down a tournament anytime soon, but Slicer is a very interesting and fun commander that is definitely competitive. Slicer creates unique situations that can catch players off guard and hand you a funny win. So that's today's deck tech. You can find the original tournament deck list in the description box below, or this Moxfield QR code right here. Here, yeah. I also covered the champion deck from Silicon Dynasty and why an Esper deck can perform well in this Grixis standard. Talking about Grixis, you also need to watch this video about why Rogsai is the standard of cEDH and how you should be designing and piloting decks around that level of play. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to YouTube or Patreon. Okay, bye-bye for real.